In this video, I'm going to show you how to add Bootstrap to a Next.js project that uses Next.js 13 and the app router. In a past video, I showed how to install Bootstrap with the Next.js pages router. So if you are using the pages router, I'll link that video down below. But most people who saw that video actually wanted to know how to install it with the newer app router. Let's get right into it. So the first thing that we are going to do is actually create a new project. So the project name here is going to be Next.js Bootstrap example, and I will be using npm. And now you're going to be prompted with a few questions. The first one is if you want to use TypeScript. I am not going to use TypeScript. I will use ESLint. I'm not going to use Tailwind because we're going to be using Bootstrap. Next, we will use an src directory. And then this is the important one here is, do you want to use the app router? And you're going to want to answer yes to that. And I'm not going to customize the default alias. And now we're going to let this get installed for us. Great. Once that's installed, we're going to change the directory into that new project. And then we're going to open this in VS Code. All right. Once we're in VS Code here, you can see we have this src app directory. And that is kind of the newer way of this Next.js 13 setup. So we're going to have a pages folder and a layout folder, and that's kind of it, and then a bit of CSS. So let's go ahead and run the app now, which if you go back to the terminal here, you can do this with npm run dev. And that's going to give you the link right here, which is localhost 3000. So go ahead and open that in the browser, and you'll see we just have the basic Next.js template here. Back in the code, we're going to do a bit of cleanup. So we can open up the pages.js and actually just delete everything. And we're going to replace it with a very, very simple home screen here, which is just going to have an h1 that says hello Bootstrap. One thing to notice here is this class, which is text changer, and this is a Bootstrap class which will actually make the text red by default. So once Bootstrap is installed correctly, the text here should be red, but at this point we haven't installed Bootstrap, so we just expect this text to be black. Another thing we're going to do quickly is just delete all the CSS in our global CSS as well as the page module. And now we can go ahead and look at the browser again, and you'll see we just have hello Bootstrap. Since it is not red, that means Bootstrap is not actually installed. Now we just need to get Bootstrap installed, and we'll know it's installed by this text turning red. So back in the terminal, we're going to just create a new tab here. We're going to install Bootstrap with npm install Bootstrap. And once that's complete, you'll actually see in our package.json that it is updated with that Bootstrap package. So that is good. Now we're going to want to go to the layout.js file here, and we're going to, above this global CSS, which currently is empty, but you'll most likely have some global CSS in your project. You're going to want to import Bootstrap above that and go ahead and save this. And that is actually it for the CSS. So if you go back into the browser, you'll see Bootstrap is now installed. And we know it's installed because the Bootstrap class of text changer is being applied to this h1 tag. So this is good for the Bootstrap CSS. However, Bootstrap also has some JavaScript features such as the accordion. So this is the accordion here, this example. And if you want this to work where you actually click these, there's a little bit more of a setup you need to add additionally. So let me go ahead and add this accordion to my page by copying this and adding it here into my homepage. So I did make a couple modifications by centering the text as well and making the column a call medium 6 and then centering it. So now if you go back, you'll see kind of this is what it looks like. And if you try to do the accordion, it actually doesn't work. And that's because the JavaScript is not currently set up to work, but it's a pretty quick fix and we can install that right now. So back in the code, we will be using the layout here. Similar to how we import the CSS, we want to import the JavaScript. And if you're familiar with how this works in the pages router, you use a use effect from React and then import the Bootstrap JavaScript. But with the new Next.js 13 setup, we want to create a new component that is a client-side only component to load this Bootstrap JavaScript only on the client side. And that's because these interactions, such as this accordion, don't really have anything to do with our server-side rendering, so we only need this to happen on the client side. So what we're going to do is create a new component, and we can do this in the folder components, which I actually have to create. And then we're going to call this the Bootstrap client.js. So the first thing we're going to do in this component is actually declare that we're using this on the client. So this is only going to be a client-side component. And then we're going to create a very simple function, which is going to make use of the use effect and then simply require that Bootstrap JavaScript. So now that we have this created, we can go back into our layout.js, and we're going to import this new component that we just created. And lastly, in our root layout here, where we have the children right below that, but still inside the body, we're going to add that new component. So it's essentially like putting all of this code right within our layout. But if you try to put that code directly in here outside of the component, and you might think you can just call use client on the layout itself, you're going to run into some issues because this is actually exporting some other stuff such as this metadata, and you might have other things that you're exporting as well from the server side functions. This is really all you need to do. If you go into your browser right now, and actually looks like I have an error, the source is actually not going to be inside the app directory, but I believe we can also just use this shortcut here, and that should work. So now if you try and click through these accordions, the JavaScript is working and Bootstrap is fully installed. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you have, go ahead and like and subscribe. I also have this as a blog version, so if you want to copy and paste the code, you can go check that out in the link below.